This is the 2013 Dodge Ram, excuse me, it's not a Dodge anymore, it's just the Ram. The 2013 Ram 3500 Laramie Super Cab 4x4. Even the name of this thing is huge. This is a gigantic truck. I'm cheating a little bit because I'm on a hill right now, but if I were to stand level with this vehicle, the hood comes up to my chin. I mean, it's just like a massive thing. It's built to be strong, not really fast. Everything about it is all about being beefy and able to take a lot of punishment. And as you can imagine, that sort of very strong construction actually makes this vehicle pretty well suited for, things like navigating construction sites. Although, as you'll learn in a second, it's maybe not the best for off-roading sort of 4x4 type things. Get the Ram 3500 with a 6.7 liter Cummins turbo diesel. Now that's actually an inline six, but with more displacement, though it's actually got some pretty big pots in there. It's turbocharged, and so you get a little bit more power and grunt on top of that already sort of like torquiness of diesel. The upshot of that is that while your power goes down to about 370 horsepower, torque jumps all the way up to 800 pound-feet. So that's just a lot of just, not really speed, but grunt that's going to help you haul heavy things, maybe not go so very fast. Now, you would think that a vehicle with an engine this big, with this much weight around it, would get pretty bad fuel economy. And if you look at the spec sheet, the fuel economy is actually listed as non-applicable because this isn't really even counted by the EPA as a consumer car. It's listed as a commercial vehicle. Fortunately, I was able to get about 16.6 miles to the gallon out of this diesel engine, but that was admittedly with a lot of very easy highway cruising. So it probably represents what I consider to be maybe a best case scenario for this vehicle. Inside, we're seeing a lot of the Chrysler DNA sort of starting to seep through, particularly in the design and layout of the dashboard. And the steering wheel seems like a Chrysler badge should go right there in the center. But then once you get from about the front of the seats on back, the Laramie Longhorn in particular starts, doing some very truckish cowboy things. For example, the Longhorn edition has all of this sort of brown leather that has embroidery on it that's supposed to look a lot like the designs that you'll see on the side of a cowboy boot. This is the newest generation of the Uconnect system. It's a touchscreen interface. The navigation system on this 8.4-inch screen is still actually Garmin based, but unlike the previous generation, which kind of looked like a Garmin Newbie just popped up on your dashboard when you hit the nav button, this one has actually been restyled to look a lot more like the rest of the Uconnect interface. The benefit there is you don't really get that sort of jarring switch between two interfaces, but then you also get one of the best navigation systems, in my opinion, on the market right now. One of the other interesting things about this generation of Uconnect is that it comes with the ability to download Uconnect apps. And these are actually apps that are installed in the dashboard that get downloaded over the 3G connection that's built into this. Now, this generation of Uconnect actually comes with Uconnect apps, and that's sort of an in-dash app interface. Now, right now, the only apps that I've seen available for download are, your TravelLink app that's going to give you actually access to some information that comes over your SiriusXM satellite connection. And then Yelp is the second app that's actually installed on here, and that gives you user-based reviews of destinations in the area. One of the other interesting things you can do with the 3G connection that this vehicle has is turn on Wi-Fi hotspot. Now, Chrysler and their Uconnect system is going to charge you a monthly fee for that, but once you've got it turned on, you'll be able to share that 3G connection with other devices in the vehicle. And a little bit further down here, you'll see you've got like a bank of buttons right here with a bunch of different controls for towing, things like this right here to control a trailer. And then you've also got an interesting button right here. This is actually the button that is added with the optional diesel exhaust braking system. So you can turn that on when you're going down a very long descent, and it'll actually use a little bit more of the back pressure from the exhaust system to help slow the vehicle. And you'll kind of hear that little extra when you do that. It's got a big tachometer over here on the left, a big speedometer over on the right, and then another gauge over here that's added by our optional urea injection system. So this is the gauge for your diesel exhaust fluid, and it basically gets sprayed on the exhaust fumes as they come out of the vehicle and helps catalyze some of the contaminants that are in that. It does help kind of clean up the emissions of the vehicle a little bit if you care about that, but it is one more thing to worry about when it comes time to maintain this vehicle. Now we're doing a little bit of, we're on the sort of dirt track that we kind of test some of our SUVs on. Now down here we've got controls for the 4x4 system. We've got settings for 2WD, which is actually a rear drive bias. Switching the knob over here to 4-wheel drive lock allows you to lock the 4x4 system into a 50-50 split, and that gives you better traction for things like climbing hills and whatnot. The trade-off though, as I've noticed, is the turn radius, which is already isn't that great, suffers a little bit in that 4x4 lock. And the final setting, which I'd actually have to stop and go into neutral for, is going to be 4x4 low. That's going to allow you to shift into that low range on the transfer case and even further multiply that 800 pound-feet of torque. Alright, so we're going to try to make a climb here, and it's a pretty steep one. When you first get on the gas, there's not a lot of power, but then that turbo kicks in and it just pulls itself up the hill. When you're in the 2WD mode, you get a little bit of rear wheel spin. We're on some pretty, not really loose gravel, but there's a layer of sand over it, so we get a little bit of wheel spin. But we're in the 4WD lock mode. There is none of that. It just goes right on up with that surge of power. On the road, the Ram 3200 actually behaves well enough. It's a pretty smooth car on the highway, although just like we saw on the unpaved trail, the way this vehicle sort of doesn't really soak up bumps so much as crashes over them leads to a lot of bouncing around the cabin. And then also the engine sort of has three different temperaments. There's the low temperament. When you're just sort of cruising around town, you get that good low-end diesel torque. You give it a little bit more. There's a second stage that happens where the vehicle springs a little bit more life. You get a bit more acceleration. But then you got that sort of third mode that you can take advantage of by, really sort of putting the pedal to the metal, and that causes that turbo to spin up, the boost gauge and the dashboard to fill up. But it never really feels scary or dangerous. I just always feel a little on edge, like I've got to be paying a little bit more attention, as you should. This is a lot of vehicles on the road. Now, this Ram 3500 Laramie Longhorn crew cab with the Cummins turbo diesel is going to start you at about $52,790. $2650 for the lower rear axle ratio on the transmission, and $7,795 for the urea diesel emissions fluid. That's going to get you a little bit cleaner emissions. If you want a lot more juice for your electrical accessories, there's $395 for dual 220 amp alternators, and the full Uconnect system is standard on this Laramie Longhorn edition. As tested, this example is going to ring in at $67,835. Now that's a lot of money for a pickup truck, but this is a big pickup truck that does a lot for your money. So the only thing left to decide at this point is if it's too much truck for you.